Hey guys, what's going on? It's Dave from Evil Eye Games. Today I want to talk about level difficulty for the player. And the first concept I want to outline is level scaling. If you're not familiar with level scaling, basically it comes from our RPG games in an element where as the player gets tougher and more powerful throughout the progress of the game, the enemies scale themselves up to match the power level of the player. So as a player character levels up, it gets more HP and more strength with which to combat the enemies. The enemies as well do more damage and they get more health as well. Now the problem that arises with this is the fact that most level scaling is done in a manner that is exponential. And the reason that this is done is to make the player feel more powerful. And the player feeling powerful is an important element to the game. You want the player to feel like they actually are going somewhere as they progress through the game. But as these numbers increase exponentially, you run into a few issues with the way that stats are handled. And there are a couple different examples of how this occurs. Most notably, one of the most popular games being World of Warcraft. As the player levels up and they get up to whatever the current level cap is, and you compare their stats to pre-level cap amounts, the numbers are pretty insanely ridiculous. So there's this constant escalation of the amount of power that gear offers the player in order to feel competent at different levels. If you want to take a game that's more akin to what we're doing as far as level scaling goes, we can use The Division as an example. Now, The Division, when it launched, was extremely broken from an endgame perspective. The original 30 levels of the game were actually really, really good and well balanced. But as soon as the player got to the level cap in the game became extremely frustrating. And one of the things that, if you've played the game and you've noticed, or if you read about it, is that enemies became these massive bullet sponges. And the problem here is that they're attempting to level the enemies relative to the level of the player. And this ends up taking away the actual fun of the game, because all you get is regular enemies who became super powerful at the end of the game. So a huge problem here is that the players don't feel powerful anymore, and you end up spending ridiculous amounts of ammunition on trying to get rid of the enemies. The time to kill the enemies goes way through the roof, and it's just a matter of brute forcing your way through something, and all of a sudden killing an enemy takes an extremely long time. And this really isn't fun for the player. Now, I know Massive is working on that game, and they have a plan to overhaul it. But as of right now, the game is completely broken to the point where it's an utter slogfest to get through any serious number of enemies. So, with that in mind, there are other ways that we can increase the difficulty to our game. Namely, you can have similarly powered enemies, but you can have them in a greater quantity. The other option, too, that is really interesting is changing the enemy's behavior based on the difficulty. So as the game progresses along, instead of making the enemies just tougher or just making more of them, you can change the actual behavior of the enemies. And this is a really great concept, but this kind of conflicts with what I have available to me. Now, the behavior trees in games such as The Division have really expansive behavior trees. They're very large, they're hundreds of nodes, and they're very complex. I don't exactly have the time or ability to go through and create a massive behavior tree for our enemies that can depend on difficulty. So unfortunately, that option is a little unrealistic. So what I'm going to focus on today is using level streaming in order to change up the difficulty via the quantity of the enemies that we have opposing the player. So I have this level right now, and I'm going to go ahead and we're going to demonstrate how to do this. So from our persistent level, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and create a new level. And I'm going to name it the same convention as we have for the section of the level that I'm working on. And I'm just going to add in an underscore easy. And then we're going to create a second one. And I'm going to call it our normal. And then finally, we're going to create one that is going to be hard. So at this point, I'm going to select each one of these and we're going to stop dropping enemies in. So we'll start with our easy level here. And I'm going to grab my enemy characters and I'm going to go ahead and drop a couple of these guys in here. Now for the easy one, I'm going to include fewer enemies. So for the beginner here, I am just going to go ahead and I'm going to drop in 2 shotgunners. And I'm going to spread them pretty far apart, as such. I'll probably move this guy back a little bit more. And let's deselect that. So these 2 guys for this particular section can be our easy. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide our easy up here with the little eye in the level outliner. And we're going to switch over to our normal. And for the normal here, I'm probably just going to end up adding in 3 enemies. And I'm going to switch up the types of enemies that we have to give the player a little bit more of a challenge. So the first guy at the back here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make him a shotgunner. And then the guy in the middle here, I'm going to go ahead and give him the cover. And I'll probably give this guy over here, we'll just say a heavy for now. Obviously, we can play test the different configurations of the easy, normal, and hard. But we want to mix it up, and we don't want to really have them interfere with each other. And I am just going to move this guy back a little bit, I guess. So we have 3 guys in our level right now. And that is definitely going to make it a little more difficult. Also considering that they are different types of enemies and mixing it up a little bit. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hide our normal. And we're going to select our hard level. And for this one, we're going to drop in some more enemies, obviously. And we can make it difficult not only by adding up the number of enemies, but you can also change the positions of the enemies as well. So if I put a shotgunner over at this side, and then I put a shotgunner over at this side as well, and then let's say we add in a couple of cover elements as well. So we'll make these 2 guys be cover. And then we can go ahead and let's say we throw in a sniper while we're at it. So we'll set a guy back in this corner here. We're going to set him to be the heavy type. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and save all. Now, these are streaming levels. So if I go ahead and I hit the play, and we move up in here, I haven't called on any of these levels to stream yet. So none of these enemies are going to be in place. I also have not set up the nav mesh. So I'm going to do that real fast. And I'm going to put the nav mesh into the persistent level because it's going to affect all of the levels. So we'll just drop in a nav mesh bounds volume. And this is really high. So let's go ahead and drop this in place. And then I'm going to use this geometry editor over here to edit the bounds of the box instead of scaling it around. So you can select the face on the edge of the box here, and I can go ahead and drag it out as such. And we can probably increase the speed of the camera movement here to make getting around much easier. So we can grab this face over here and make sure this is all covered. And I have a depth to the level, so I'm going to go ahead and drag this down. And just to be sure, I'm going to go ahead and drag this guy up here. And we're going to switch back over to the place mode. And then we want to make sure that our nav mesh is actually working, so I'm going to hit the P key, and that's going to show us our nav mesh. So once that's complete, I'm going to go ahead and save all. So now we're going to have to go ahead and go into our HUD folder, and we're going to have to make a difficulty selection screen. So we're also going to need an enumerator while we're at it. So first I'm going to go into our enumerator here. We're going to right click, go to blueprints, and create a new enumeration. And we're going to call this the difficulty enum. And this is going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going to go ahead and add 3 new enumerators. And we're going to make it easy, medium, and hard. Or I'm going to call it easy, normal, and hard. And we'll go ahead and save that and close. And back in our HUD folder, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create a new user interface widget blueprint. And I'm going to call this the difficulty select widget. And this is going to be pretty simple. All we're really going to need to do for this guy is I'm going to change out the canvas panel with an overlay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add an image to the background of it because we don't want the player to click past the difficulty selection screen. And then for the brush, we're just going to set the color here, and I'm going to make it opaque, so I'm going to set it to like a 0.2 for the alpha. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to add in a vertical box. And I'm going to go ahead and center this up in our overlay. And inside of this, I'm going to go ahead and add some text. And we're going to add some buttons. And there we go. So we're going to add a button. I'm going to add 4 buttons. I'm going to create an easy, medium, or easy, normal, and hard, and then a cancel button. So then we're going to have to add some text to our buttons as well. So for each text here, we can go ahead and assign it a value. So we'll say that one's easy. And it doesn't look like we really need to fill that out. So we're just going to go ahead and set the font and the size. And then for the button itself, we can go ahead and fill it out. And we can also set the color palette of our button. So for a normal here, I'm going to set the color to black. the hovered and the pressed colors as well. And then we're going to just make our way down to the next button. And then for this text block at the top, I'm just going to throw in some instructional text. So we'll just make it really simple. And we'll select the difficulty. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add some padding in between this one here to give it some space. So I'll give a vertical padding. See on the top here, we'll set it to, let's try 30. And I'll put some padding on this one as well. So now we have a menu that's going to pop up, and it's going to tell us to select a difficulty of easy, normal, hard. And we can stylize them as we want a little bit. As such. And we're going to have to go ahead and give the buttons a name as well. So we'll just name them appropriately. Easy button. Normal button. Call this last one hard button. And then we're going to have the cancel button. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and save this. Now we have to actually make these buttons do something. So if we go back to the main window here, I'm going to go ahead and open up in our game files our game instance. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to have to create a new variable up here. So I'm going to add a new variable, and I'm going to call this current difficulty. And then for the type, we're going to make it our enum that we created, the difficulty enum. And we're going to go ahead and compile and save this. And we're going to have to create a new function. So we want to create a function to set the difficulty. And all this is going to do is we're going to get and set this variable. And then we can connect the input to the set difficulty. And that's going to be it. We're going to create a new function as well that's going to get the difficulty. And all it's going to do is return our current difficulty here. So we're just going to get this, and we're going to plug this into the return node. And that is going to be it. So that we can call on and get whatever the current difficulty setting is. So I'm going to compile and save this, and we're going to end up closing this. And then we're going to go into our difficulty select widget, and we're going to go to our graph. And we're not going to need the event construct and the event ticks, really. I'm going to get rid of the event tick. We're going to have to add these buttons to our graph. So I'm going to select the button and add an on-clicked event for each one. Now, the on-clicked cancel button is going to be really easy. I plan on adding this the same way that we add the settings menu. So it's just going to lay on top of our main menu screen. So what we're essentially going to do is we're going to simply remove from parent. in the event that we click the cancel button. And then for our different difficulties, we're going to have to go ahead and we're going to get our game instance. So up here at the event construct, I'm going to go ahead and get the instance. And then we're going to cast it to our 3P game instance. And then we're just going to go ahead and we're going to promote this to a variable, and we'll just simply call it game instance. So for each one of these, we're going to want to go ahead and set the game instance difficulty. So we're going to grab this and we're going to get our game instance, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to call on the set difficulty. And we can simply paste these in place, one for each button. Plug it in, and then set the appropriate difficulty. And we want to make sure to plug the game instance into the target as well. And then what we're doing from the main menu is when we hit the new game button, we're loading a level. And I haven't really gotten to continuing yet, but in this case, we're simply going to go ahead and do what the new game button for now is doing. So we want to drag out, we want to go ahead and open the level. And the level that we're naming, or that we're opening here, we're just going to want to go ahead and open that level's persistent level. And then we can simply connect these in for now, because they're all going to do the same thing. And we can go ahead and compile and save this. And we can close out of our difficulty select widget. And we're going to have to modify our main menu widget now. So in the HUD, I'm going to go ahead and open up our main menu widget. And if we go into the graph here, and we find our new game button, we're going ahead and doing all this switching up here. And it looks like I forgot to set the current widget in there, so we'll get back to that in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and break the links to this real fast. What we're going to want to do instead from our on-clicked new game button is we're going to want to create a widget. And we're going to want to create it as a difficulty select widget. And then we're going to need a reference to the player controller for the owning player as well. So we're going to go ahead and get a player controller and plug that in. And then we're going to go ahead and add to viewport. And for this portion here, we can actually go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to add this into our difficulty select widget. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and save this. And we'll go ahead and reopen that difficulty select widget here. And in the graph right here, what we're doing is getting our player controller. We're going to get the HUD. And we're going to want to go ahead and cast to our 3P player HUD. And we can actually plug this in right here and change these to plug into this cast. All right, and so once we go ahead and cast to our 3P player HUD, we are going to go ahead and change or set the current widget. And we're going to set the current widget to our loading screen. And then I throw in a small delay in order to give it time to change the widget. And then we go ahead and open our level. So if we go ahead and compile and save, Now, I'm going to go ahead and open up our main window, or our main menu map. And if we go ahead and hit play, and we go to hit new game, it's going to add our difficulty select here. Now, if we hit cancel, it's going to go ahead and destroy that menu. And if I hit easy, it's going to go ahead and move into the loading screen. But at this point, we're still not going to have anything that pops up in our room over here because we haven't actually told those levels to stream in. So we're going to go ahead and open the level. And then we're going to have to go into the blueprints for the section of each one. So right now I have the level 1 streaming one with level 1 S1 normal, hard, and easy. So we're going to go to our blueprints here, and we're going to go to our sublevels, and we're going to edit our level 1 S1. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to get the game instance setting. So we're going to go ahead and right click and get game instance. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to cast this to our 3P game instance. And then we're going to go ahead and get the difficulty. And then we're just going to simply pull out from our current difficulty, and we're going to search for a switch. And then if we're on easy, we're going to go ahead and we're going to load our stream level. And we're going to need to do this for each one. So for easy here, we're going to load level 1 underscore S1 underscore easy. And we want to make visible after load. And then I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this for each difficulty. We'll move this down here. And then I'm just going to change the level of each one to match the appropriate level. And at this point, we can go ahead and compile that. And I'm going to save all. And we're going to go ahead and go back to our main menu. And I'm going to go ahead and play from here. So select our new game. We're going to set it to easy first. So now, as I make my way to this corridor, we're going to have the 2 shotgun enemies in here that were placed in easy. Now, obviously, I'm just kind of throwing things in here, and I'd have to work on the placement of each of the enemies, maybe tweak the enemies a little bit to make them tell everybody in the same room that I'm in there. But if we go ahead and play up our level again, and we set it to normal, we should have a different configuration for the enemies that are present. So right now we have the 3 guys that are in there. So there's 1 shotgunner over here to my right. There is a cover element right here, or a cover enemy right here. And it looks like a shotgun or a sniper element over here. And then finally, if we go ahead and play it one last time, and we set it to hard, we have, it looks like the easy configuration, so somewhere it looks like I messed up. And it does look like I didn't set the appropriate difficulty level here. So I'll compile and save that. And then if we try playing again, go into hard. We're going to have the appropriate selection of enemies for hard. So that's going to complete today's video. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. And thanks for watching.